of something that attracts Canadians.
Maple syrup, salmon.
Incredibly bland lifestyle.
An apology? No. I don't know any jokes.
It's no good. I think his anger is building up slowly. I think he can hear us. He's just getting himself wound up ready for the stream.
Pete, if you can hear us, bang on your desk 3 times. Did you happen to go back and listen to our impromptu, I don't know if I call it a stream, but when I hopped on and Mega Jetty was on there, we talked about video games last week?
I hadn't, no.
Okay, I was curious.
Do you notice that our voices are actually broadcasting on his channel?
I hope not, because last week when I hopped in, I believe it was in the... it was in this one. I don't know. Surely he would tell us to stop if that was the case.
Hello, everybody in the chat. The show hasn't started yet, but you can hear us anyway.
We're the bumbling comedians that trying to kill time before the show starts.
Yeah. At the moment, the host of the show can't even hear us.
I'm actually trying. I've got like a whole complicated setup here.
All right, I forgot to put the camera up, but we are here. We are live. Crystal Lake Fridays. We're back. Thanks for tuning in as always. Do I have my co-host with me, my special guest? Can you hear me?
How long has everyone else been able to
I
hear
see you
us?
talking,
Oh,
but I can't hear you because I wasn't connected. Hello.
Yes?
Now I'm in. I've never worked that quickly before in my life, gentlemen. I'm glad you could join me.
Glad to be here, Pete.
And Bollocks has joined us this week. How are you, Bollocks?
Oh, I'm fine. How are you, Pete?
Good, good. Glad you could both join me. I know Em and I had some fun last week without you, but we're glad to have you here this week. And to the chat, I think OG called it.
It was so much fun without you, Bollocks. I can't guarantee we're gonna have that much fun tonight. You should have been there last week.
Because I'm here to ruin it now.
Yes.
Okay. It's a deal.
OG is with us. He says it is the Boggy Creek Monster. I need to turn the sound up on the game, gentlemen. I do not have any background because I turned the music down. So Crystal Lake Gamer Gurus is in the house too. He says Crystal Lake Fridays, but OG also says those grunts sound weirdly like a form of language.
Tell him we're offended.
Yeah, I hope they're not talking about us.
Justin Proper's in the house. He said this game is so much fun. Long time no see, Justin. Good to see you, man. Thanks for coming in. It is. All right, as soon as I can, here we go. Let's go into those audio settings and turn them way up. That way it just isn't, we don't have to rely on filling dead air. We can just let the crickets do the talking for us, gentlemen. So thank you again for joining me tonight. Did we have a plan of what we were going to talk about, or are we just going to rant about retro games?
We should do that. Oh, hold on. Blocks have some ideas.
Yes, I do have some ideas.
Okay.
And the idea is let's just rant about whatever we feel like ranting about.
Oh, sounds good. Sounds good. If it happens to get to retro games, I might have a final fight in the background on there for you, Bollocks, because I knew you were coming tonight. I wanted to throw something similar to that on there.
You don't have Bare Knuckles? What's the game?
I'll have it called Streets of Rage, but it's probably
Streets of Rage, yes.
Yes.
Bare Knuckle. I didn't realize.
From the NES version.
I was trying to actually speak to you in your native tongue.
turn down the...
Oh, I don't know. I think you are a closet.
We're pretty loud.
I did have a Sega
turn down the
Genesis,
monster
not a
volume.
Super Nintendo when I was a kid. So
I know, but the way you talked about it made it sound like it was a door prop rather than actual entertainment unit.
Having some issues.
I want to oversell it.
Well,
All right. Soy is in the house. Soy has joined us. Well, sorry, gentlemen. I was having some technical difficulties there. But now I'm back. So it is Friday.
persecutor for how show is going to go tonight, everybody.
It pretty much is. Pretty much is.
One thing I do want to know, though, is, well, it's probably a question I think Pete wants to know, and I think most people in the chat want to know. When is the next video coming, Mr. Matthews?
Oh, yeah, that. Probably this week. I usually launch on Fridays. I'm a little impatient, so I'm probably not going to wait until this coming Friday, but this week for sure. And thank you for asking.
Sweet.
Oh, not at all. He wants to premiere it so he can watch it again with us.
No.
Because he was telling me about how much he loves watching his own videos over and over again.
Yeah, once I decide this is good enough, I don't want to work on it anymore. That's it. I don't want to see it again, and I know that my opinion of it will not increase in value over time. So that's it. I'll watch it once with my wife, usually to see if any of the comedy lands at all, and then that's it.
And how does the wife react to your many hours of effort?
Polite laughter. Oh, there's a guinea pig.
Oh, bless her. She clearly doesn't understand, does she?
No. Felix, turn your radio off. Felix, turn your radio off.
We've got some feedback. We definitely have.
Echo.
Fred, that is my TV.
Has your TV got a remote ability to turn down the volume? Does it work?
Yep.
Give it a go.
F this TV.
Ah.
Alright.
Oh, this show's so polished at the moment.
It really is.
Oh, crap.
I'm just gonna give you a chance to get your settings in order there, Felix, so we don't have the feedback. Let me know in the YouTube chat when, because I'm getting pwned over here by Chad at the moment, and people are escaping.
That was fun. Anybody else want to join in and give us some ridiculous amounts of feedback? I love hearing my voice several times over.
Oh yes.
Alex, when is your next video coming?
You're a funny man. I'm retired. Unofficially. But the main reason is that I just realized I couldn't be asked
Oh,
to
come
do it.
on.
It's sometimes you realize that other people do enough content for you to be happy without actually adding to it. But also because I've discovered that I'm such an amoral perfectionist, I can never ever finish a video enough to my standard.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's also another reason why I wouldn't watch any of my other crafted videos again, because I know that I'd be like, timing could have been better here, or whatnot.
It's very annoying because there are things I wouldn't mind doing, but it would take me too long, and I just haven't got the time at the moment. That's why I was kind of hoping my workplace would be nice to me and put me off for 3 months on 80%. And they didn't. They told me that my job was important. It's not fair. I want to be able to Skype and get free government money.
You can't just volunteer to do that anyway?
You can, but you won't get as much as you did.
Oh.
You can never die.
Oh dear, oh Pete's really going for what's called some unnecessary kills tonight.
Oh my god, I'm getting owned over here. Not a good way to start the night, that's for sure. But Gamer Guru is in the house. He says that you should check out Predator as well. It just came out today. It did. And I will check it out when it's cheaper. I am not paying full price. Don't pay full price for many games.
No. Oh, Pete would very happily accept somebody sending it to him via his Steam account.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And Soy, thanks for coming in. And sorry about the technical difficulties. And I see Inti is with us as well. Good evening, Inti. Thanks for coming in as always. And I'm getting dummied by a Chad. Oh.
Yes.
The important thing is that you look good doing it.
No, I don't. But I'm too focused on this one guy. I need to... Yeah, at least I got him. 1 for 9.
He looks like he looks like he deserves to be chopped up.
Really,
so,
though.
Are you going to give us any sort of teasers about this video then, Mr. M?
Oh, it's just the continuing bulldozing through the hardest NES games in according to the internet.
Right.
So it is the next game, and it is a British developed game. Also, I'll say that.
Ooh, okay. I'm trying to think of the British software houses that actually supported the NES. So I'm assuming it's probably something like Ocean Software, or
No, Ocean was the one I would think of probably first. Well, Ocean and Rare would be the ones I would think of first for British NES games. But this one's actually from Software Creations Limited. That they were the developers of. I think their most popular game is probably what's it called? Solstice.
well,
I guess.
their products are more famous than the actual company. I don't recognize that name really.
I think they also did the Wolverine NES game.
Oh, God.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
It was that ridiculously hard Wolverine game.
I don't know. I never played it.
So I must admit, I do have an NES, but it's that sort of console that just wasn't that popular over here back in the day. Everybody either had home computers, or at minimum they might have had a Master System, and then everybody just skipped straight onto the 16-bits when they came along.
So even the Master System wasn't that big at the time?
Well, supposedly the Master System was the biggest seller up till about 1991, I think. And then, because this is going back to the good old days where Japan got the release first, then America would get it like 18 months later, and then we might get it, say, 2 or 3 years later. So, what, the Mega Drive came out in Japan in what, 88? I think you had it in 1990, and I think we got it in 91. So it was sort of just picking up traction around about then. But the, I think the Amiga 500 was probably the most popular computer at that point.
Yeah, other than the Commodore, I know the names of some of these computers, or gaming computers. I don't know what they're considered nowadays, but it's only in like recent years that I've even become aware of them. So, other than the Commodore 64, which I of course knew about. But.
Oh, fine machine, fine machine. It certainly made a parent wince for when a kid wanted one in the like we did in like the mid 80s, because every Christmas I always get this overwhelming desire to find a video on YouTube for a program that was called The Very First, and on it was a demo that basically played old Christmas songs on the 64's very famous SID music chip. And so obviously it sounds terrible, and the graphics are pretty piss poor because it was done in what, like 82 or something. But it always reminds me of that very first Christmas when we got it, because it's the first thing we played, because obviously it was a Christmas themed thing. And the other bit that cracks me up, always at the end it comes up with this sort of like advertisement saying that, oh, this Christmas, buy, you know, the Commodore 64, only, I think it was $399 in 82 money. And I think I looked it up recently, and that's something like about, I think it's about, is it $9,000 or $1,000 now in our sort of today's money? And I just thought of the perfect slogan, which is the Commodore 64, the perfect way for your parents to say no this Christmas. Because I can't think of many parents who would be quite willing to spend that much on one ungrateful little shit of a child. I know my parents certainly wouldn't have. I mean,
yeah,
the
I
only
think I
reason
would have gotten a flat no also.
Yeah, the only reason we ended up with one was because my old man managed to track one down secondhand from somebody who was selling it, who didn't really understand how much it was really worth. I think it was like somebody's father who just wanted to offload some junk of his kids when he went off to university. I don't think he'd been best pleased when he came home for the first semester and realised that, oh, my dad has sold my computer for probably about 20% of its actual value, thanks.
So what were the games you just loved when you were a kid growing up?
Well, the first one that automatically springs to mind, even though it's actually not a particularly good game, is the movie adaptation of Ghostbusters. Now, I'm sure everybody's played that in some form or another, because they were all roughly the same.
Yeah, the
Sorry.
AVGN Ghostbusters, essentially, right? Where you had to drive from building to building. And... Okay.
You got the...
But the Commodore was a little bit better, just to jump in on that one. I had the Master System myself, and I had that Ghostbusters game, which was superior to any of the ones found on Commodore, Atari, or NES, but the C64 was a little bit better than the NES version, just a little bit. And I just want to greet Mr. I came in the room. Mr. I says, Friday night at Crystal Lake, it sure is. It sure is. We're here. And I have some guests. We're talking some retro gaming and other things that we want to talk about. Sorry, gentlemen. Please continue about the Ghostbusters.
No, if you want to chip in, well, it is your channel.
As soon as I'm not playing as Jason, I'll be a lot more active. It's just
Fair enough.
when I'm Jason, I'm trying not to look as terrible as possible.
Yeah. But yeah,
Now-
that's one of the first games I can remember playing, and even as a 7 or 8 year old kid, even I realized that this game's a bit samey, because the whole premise is, well, you can tell it was written by one programmer who didn't really fully understand the premise of what he was writing the game for. In fact, I even think it was a game he'd already had sort of basic program. He'd basically programmed it, and then they said, can you make this game in X amount of time? And it's like, okay, I'll just modify this one I've already done. And it's because that's one of the reasons, one of the great unsolved mysteries apparently is, why is Winston not in the game? Why is there only 3 Ghostbusters? And supposedly it's because this original game, I think his name was Gary Kitchen, I think he was the programmer. He programmed it originally just for 3 characters, and because of the tight deadline he was given, he couldn't go back and start adding characters and all that in, so it just had to stay at 3. And so. But the problem with it is that when you've done caught the first ghost, you think, oh great, I've got the hang of that. Okay, now you've got to do that again, maybe about 15, 20, maybe even 25 times. And then you might get to the next bit of the game, which is you have to sneak past the Marshmallow Man. And if you do that, it's game over. And it's sort of like, that's not much of a game. But then I am a 6 or 7 year old, and I don't care, because I've got a computer now, and my mates at school haven't yet, so yeah, I've got one up on them. But one thing that makes me laugh is there's obviously a lot of, well, there's not a lot, there's hundreds of them now, of videos, long plays on YouTube and various other video sharing sites. Like one channel I subscribe to is called, I think it's called World of Long Plays, and they've been going for years.
Yeah.
And whenever a new one will come up on the feed, especially if it's a Commodore 64 game, it cracks me up how quickly the game is completed. Like the average sort of time limit is about 9 minutes. So when people these days moan about things like, oh, the new Resident Evil 3 remake, I finished that in
4 hours
I
long.
only finished it in 4 or 5 hours. It's like, you don't realize how far we've come.
Exactly. I hear you, and I do watch that same channel, guys. The long plays, and I watch for the C64 ones as well. Bollocks, they're always fun to watch. I know what you mean in terms of the timing, but I just want to address the chat again for a minute. The guys are talking about Predator, which is made by the same people who made this game. They went on to make the Predator Hunting Ground game. It is new. Inti and Mr. I are talking that the AI is a little unbalanced, that they're too weak. They're kind of just in the way, but I'm sure they'll fix that up, guys. And Soy, don't worry about it, man. All good that you popped in. You had some technical difficulties. Don't worry about it. We're here. We're just going to keep talking, and that's the way it's going to be, so.
Now, Inti did mention RoboCop as an Ocean game a while back. My understanding was that was like a system seller, at least in the UK.
Oh,
Can you confirm?
Wait a minute, the RoboCop, like the NES game?
No.
The Commodore 64 version.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That is. Do you know what? It's a terrible game. It was programmed badly, and yet I absolutely adore it because of it being so bad. It came. My version I had as a kid came in a box that was called the Hollywood Collection, and I can remember seeing it, and it was like, I gotta have that. I think it was maybe, I don't know, about 10 quid or whatever it was back then, which caused a few arguments with my parents. But it came with, I can remember now, it was RoboCop, Batman the movie, Ghostbusters 2, and Last Crusade. That was it. Yeah. All of them terrible when you look back, because a lot of these movie time games were bloody awful. But because of the fact I played it as a kid, you always have that sort of nostalgia for it, no matter, even though it's absolutely terrible. Like Ghostbusters 2 is ridiculously short. It only has like 3 levels, and the reason it takes so long, though, or did back in the day, was because being on a cassette, it was a multi-loader. You spent more time loading them than you did actually playing the levels. But the game for RoboCop didn't have that problem. What it had was what seemed like programmers who sort of lost interest when they got to about the 3rd level, because you had first level was a street level. You just go around shooting random thugs. Then you have the scene where he shoots that bloke in the bollocks in the film. Only in this, you don't get to shoot him in the nuts. You just have to. It's basically like a slightly still pixel of a bloke holding a woman, and he just moves side to side in front of you, and you have to try and shoot him without shooting her. Then you get another street level. Then you're in the drug lab. Oh yeah, and the drug lab level, they set the timer too tight that you can't actually physically finish the level without cheating. So wow. Even if you get past that level, then you get to the level where they completely ballsed up the programming so that it's completely pixelated and you can't see any of the background. None of it makes actual sense.
Just in the chat, I think, because you were talking about Batman the movie, Inti mentions he has memories of Batman 89. It was on Amiga or Commodore 64 that he vividly remembers one of the stages was the bat plane snapping the cables on the parade balloon. Is that the same game he's talking about, Inti? Magic, yeah. Sorry, Bollocks.
Yep, that's the one, yeah.
I don't recall that game. I recall I think I know the Last Crusade game. I'm pretty sure I played that. Is there a scene where you start and you're jumping from like car to car on the train, like with the animal circus?
That's right, yeah. You had the laughable, I think it's a giraffe. His neck.
Yeah, the neck was
out of one carriage.
Yes, yeah, I remember it now.
Yeah, and the best thing about it is that because of the way the sprites were put together, you could see the net coming up from inside the carriage, and you could see where it was actually a disemboweled net because there was no actual body attached to it. But yeah, the Batman '89 game, yeah, there's the Amiga version's a lot better visually than the Commodore version, because it couldn't do sort of like third-person vehicle sort of graphics like the Amiga could.
Well, who developed the Amiga version of Batman?
Oh, they were all
I
done
guess
by
it was Sunsoft.
no good old Ocean again, bless them.
Oh yeah. I'll be honest. I haven't played a single game from Ocean or on the NES or the Genesis from Ocean that I liked. I've always seen them as kind of a lesser game developer.
I was gonna say, because I know that we've both talked before about AVGN in the past, and his Predator review. But I remember, Bollocks, the Predator game that was on the C64.
Yep.
I couldn't.
Where you just are playing Arnold running on a scroller sort of game.
Yes, but it's more of like, it was very similar. I think they cloned it. Do you remember Platoon? The Platoon version from Ocean? I think they just cloned that game and put like whoever's skin over the other, because the mapping, because you would jump, it was more of like a 2D, but you would go up and down into different areas rather than the NES side scroller was just a straight side scroller. You would go up and down through areas of the jungle and you have to look at. That's another game that I vividly remember getting for a birthday, and I never finished it because the Predator was just effing impossible. You just couldn't beat him. He was impossible.
Oh yeah, I don't think I ever played it myself, but again, I've watched one of the playthroughs and it is laughingly bad.
Oh.
And you're probably right about them ripping off Platoon or whatever came first, because they were notorious for doing that. It was a case of they get licenses and then it was just bash it out as quickly as possible. But I mean, the trouble is that, like I said, is that I kind of let them off because I have such good memories of playing these bloody awful games. And but one thing I will give them, for those of us who had to go through the pain of loading your games up from an audio cassette, was their loader screens. The music that they used to put on there was fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, to a kid with no understanding that this is rubbish, it was like, oh, this is great. Listen to this. Listen to these groovy sounds that's coming up for at least 3-4 minutes.
I kind of collect and listen to video game soundtracks, and there's been a few games where it's like, what do you mean the loader? There's just like a track just for the loader, or someone just remixed just the loading music, and it's been really, really good.
Make
Yeah.
them pay for what they did to us.
I said to you before about my version of Ghostbusters. Actually, their loading screen, instead of just being a static image and music, they actually put a game into the loader, so that while you were waiting for the game itself to finish loading, you could play a game. And it was like a cut-down version of Space Invaders. In fact, if I remember right, it was actually called Invader Load, they called it. So you'd get it, start loading the game as normal, you get about, I don't know, 60 seconds into it, and this game would pop up. And I think it was a brilliant idea, because it gave you something to do while you were waiting for this game. Because, the average sort of wait would probably be about 4 or 5 minutes. And you imagine could you imagine that? I mean, a very good example of games that took so long to load more than the actual gameplay was Terminator 2. Now, I wanted the cartridge version for obvious reasons, but again, because my father is a miserable tight ass, he refused and got me the cheap tape version, which meant that even the loader to start the game has to be loaded first, to then load the first level, which then obviously loaded another loader to explain the story, which then goes to another level. And there was 10 levels, so you can imagine the amount of hammering my poor tape player got out of that game.
Yeah. Kill for
And
mother.
it is actually amazing to think that, the patience that us kids had back then, just to play, a pretty mediocre game, is quite staggering.
Yeah, there are some cases where you just don't really understand that things are going to be better than this. Like I grew up with cartridge-based systems, so I never really experienced loading screens until the PlayStation came out, and then depends on how the game was programmed, but you were literally waiting for a minute or two just to play the game, and in between each section of the game. Specifically, I'm thinking of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, where it actually kind of gave you something to do during the loading screen, where you can kind of spin the loading word around. And I didn't really think anything of it then, but there's no way I would tolerate even a minute or two of loading time now. It's unreasonable.
Just to show how nostalgia can get the better of some people, is a lot of the sort of devices you can buy these days for us people who like keeping the original hardware. I can never remember the name of it. It's basically a cartridge that emulates the original disc drive. So obviously, you put an SD card into it. It then has a cable that plugs into the old serial port for the disc drive, and then it fools the Commodore into thinking that it's actually loading from was it 15?
Oh, the 1541.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. But for the purists, you can get an adapter that plugs into the tape port and load up actual tape files, and it will load like it did from an audio cassette. So you'll get the loader, you'll get the loading times as if it was still authentic. Now, I don't know why anybody would want to put themselves through that, other than just to think, oh, I remember this.
Yeah, maybe
It's
one time,
bored out
bollocks. That's it.
bored out of my skull for hours waiting for this sodding thing to load. But the one thing it doesn't give you is the joy of loading up a game only for it to fail to load because your head was slightly out of alignment, and then you'd have to piss about finding a small flat blade driver of the right size so you could adjust it, and then hope that you get it back in alignment. Oh god. Yeah, I can remember doing that a few times.
Just want to catch up on the chat for a minute. Mr. I says, speaking of short games, one of the shortest games he's ever played was Legend of Akagi. I do remember that game. I'm not super familiar with it. But then he goes on to say that I'm a real gamer, old school, thank you. I had to say that. And I am Jason again, only because we're playing an offline match because I couldn't load into a game. And Soy says that Michael's is closed, so there's going to be a hold on our work. All good, man. Whenever it comes. Sorry, guys. Let's continue.
Yeah. But yeah, that's sort of my sort of take on what early gaming was like to me, because I didn't. After that, I basically had to buy all my own stuff. So I think I got my Mega Drive in '92, which was fun then because I still don't understand how they got away with charging what they did for the games, because we were paying about I think it was about £40 per game back then, roughly, maybe 35, 40, which again is the equivalent these days of about I think it's about 80 or 90 quid, which is quite a lot of money when you think about it. And but somehow we managed to twist the arms of our parents to buy these things for us. I mean, the first game I remember getting was Alien 3, and it wasn't even my birthday or anything. I just pestered my old girl enough that she relented. I don't know how she explained it to the old man while we were 40 quid down that month, but I mean, yeah, it was a big step up, and also, getting rid of the horrible endless loading screens was always a good thing, but yeah, and for reasons I still don't quite fully understand, I always wanted an Amiga 500, even though it wouldn't been utilized properly, because the Mega Drive was actually better hardware anyway, and the games were cheaper because they were on disc, but the computer itself cost a bloody fortune for its time. With around the sort of £400 sort of mark. So I don't know why. It's probably because a posh kid at school had one, and I wanted to try and probably appear to be slightly better off than we actually were.
See, that's the thing about the. We had the 64 here, Bollocks, and I've heard you talk about the Amiga. Even Cub talks about in a polite term towards the Amiga. That was something that was unfamiliar here in North America to me. I knew one kid in school that had an Amiga.
Well, that's the thing. I was always in the impression that that was still sort of Commodore in their sort of successive years before they really started going badly for them when they started putting out stuff that just didn't sell. I mean, you'll very rarely find them these days. Is what was called the 64. I think it's GS. It was called, where some idiot thought it'd be a good idea to turn a Commodore 64 into a games console. So just a cartridge-based version of it with no keyboard. And the best thing about it was that hardly any of the software houses bothered to make games that were particularly exclusive to that version. And you know, because they just automatically assume, well, we don't need to because it's the same hardware inside. But what they didn't bother to check was that lots of games that they'd already put out actually need you to press a key to start the game. So what ended up happening was they were bundling games with this machine that people loaded up and they couldn't get beyond the intro screen. And apparently, in the end, they quickly, discontinued it. And several of the boards to make the games console, they just modified back into ordinary Commodore 64 to try and sell them to get rid of them.
Wow.
I do love stories of companies ballsing it up like that. It really is amusing when they really get things badly wrong.
But Inti in the
It
chat.
seems like the. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to read Inti's comment because it leads into what we were just talking about, is that I remember the days of inconvenience and lost time. Those were the days, but why would anyone want to experience Commodore loading times? But then I had a comment on what you're talking about for Symphony of Night, and that we don't even want anything to do with load screens anymore. Like, I get bored waiting for a Switch game to get off, like, the promo screen. I'll turn my console. I've come that far. I'm that far at the other end of the spectrum. I just don't have the patience.
There comes a point where the quality of life improvements that they make to not just video games but just stuff in general, you can't go back once you get used to it. Like, who the hell wants to roll up their car window manually? Going further, how many people have now gotten used to being able to just kind of click the button to roll down the window, and it just finishes up on its own? And it's a pain in the ass when you go into someone else's older car where you actually have to push the button down the entire time. So just same principle as with the games.
Mr. M,
Yeah,
are you
these-
talking about a time where if you were watching television and you decided you wanted to see what was on the other channel, you actually had to get out of your chair and walk towards the television and press a button to change the channel? Good God alive. What kind
Actually,
of
you know what?
prehistoric-
I actually don't remember a time where there wasn't a remote control, but the remote control for my TV when I was a kid, or my parents' TV when I was a kid, had 3 buttons. Actually, I think that probably had 5. Honestly, it had a power button, channel up, channel down, volume up, volume down, and that was it. And there were pretty much 5 channels to choose from anyway.
Very nice. Yes, it's the. I do remember having TVs in the house before we had our first VHS video player. I know it sounds crazy these days to think that somebody might have just had one TV with no remote that you had to manually change by getting out of your seat and going up on the set to do it.
And was it
But-
a button or was it a dial? The chunk, 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 chunk.
Oh no, this was a good old-fashioned wooden panelled TV with screen and the one speaker on the side. Fine piece of equipment. And like a lot of CRTs, it developed 2 problems in sort of like its latter years, because this is back in the days when you either rented your TV because you couldn't afford to buy one, or you got it second hand and it already had about maybe 10 years worth of beforehand, because I think the TV that my parents had when I was, say about 7 or 8, was probably like a late 70s TV, and it developed a lovely fault where when you turned it on in the morning, half the screen was missing. So what my ingenious father did, rather than do what most people would do, which was take it to the tip and replace it, nope, he stuck a piece of plastic, a plastic tube, down the back of the TV, where if you tapped the tube after about 5 minutes of it warming up, if you tapped it enough times, the picture would come back. It would occasionally drop, and you'd have to go back and tap it again.
They deserve
And this
to die,
probably
Jason.
lasted for maybe
Make them suffer.
3 years after they developed the fault, until eventually it went bang. But yeah, they all had little quirks like that. And I'm sure the computer TV he gave me for the Commodore, because obviously you wouldn't allow that to be played on his beloved TV, because he might want to play when he's watching the news or something. That was an even worse condition. I think that one actually, when we bought it, had no on button. So my old man improvised by putting like he originally put a button on the side that he wired it himself, until I pointed out to him that it was a push button. So if you pushed it, and obviously it came on, but the second you took your finger off, it turned off. So he had to then replace it with another one, much to his protest. But
That's my fault.
yeah, it's funny
Hunt
when
them
you think
down
back
and
to
make
how
them pay.
how crappy it all was back then, but you just took it as perfectly acceptable because you didn't know any different.
Yeah.
I remember a go-between when I would visit relatives. I don't want to cast any ill words, but the relatives that lived out in the country, there was a go-between that old, Inti mentions it in the chat where we were talking about having that knob. You would change the channel before the remote control. There was like an in-between period where there was like a box with a cable attached to the TV, and that would be the remote control. I do
That's
remember
where the
my
name
aunt having
remote
that.
control came from, yeah. Because if that hadn't have existed first, then the name wouldn't have stuck. Because the whole idea of remote control, as I found out myself when I asked I think my dad for one of my birthdays as a kid, I said remote controlled car, and he took it literally and got me one that was remotely controlled, it was a controller with a cable connected to the car.
Where you had to run along behind it.
And you had to run along behind it, yeah. Yes, but if they'd have been infrared sensors right from the start, they probably would have been called something else as opposed to the remote control.
And honestly, I don't. Back then, I don't know if I would have been disappointed with a remote controlled car that was still tethered to a cable, unless I had a friend that actually had a real, freely remote controlled car.
Well, again, I suspect that one of my friends probably did, and that's where I got the idea from. It's like when I asked my dad if I could have a go-kart, because somebody I knew had one. So what does he do? He builds one himself. This thing was not a go-kart. It was basically more like a trolley. That he could double up from like moving heavy stuff as well, but then I could use it when he didn't need it as a go-kart.
What did your dad do? He sounds pretty handy. Like what was his job? I asked him one time and he gave me a... Please no! Go ahead.
He was an engineer, sort of mechanical engineer, but he only really specializes in sort of like that. He thinks he can do other stuff as well, and he can. He just doesn't do it to a very good quality, and he's not a natural spender either. So if he can do something what he considers a lot cheaper and save himself money, then he's satisfied. No matter even if the outcome is, even if the outcome is pretty poor, he'll still feel pretty good about himself.
That's fine.
Yes, but yeah. So sort of that's that kind of thing rolled into how I got into gaming. It was always done on the cheap to a certain extent. Like we would have had a Commodore 64 when it was going out of date, I suppose, and everything else, it had to be bought by my own money, because as far as he was concerned, he bought us a computer, and that's it. He fulfilled his remit. Didn't need to buy another one. Didn't. The whole concept that maybe it would go out of date just didn't really, reconcile with his brain. I mean,
Yeah,
I can actually remember. Sorry to cut you off there, mate.
That's
But I remember probably when I was about, I don't know, 14 or 15, and obviously at school doing coursework for exams and stuff like that, and thinking at the time it would be useful if we had a PC at home so I could do my work there. And I remember him saying to me one night, "Got your computer?" "What, a PC?" "Yep, got your PC." He was he got it from some motorbike club he was a member of. They got had this free computer they weren't using, so it's like, "Oh, brilliant, bring it home." He ends up bringing home a 1982 IBM that had been in storage for at least 15 years at that point. And this thing, I mean, I think it was running like DOS version, something like 1.2 or something, and obviously all the software was on 5.25-inch disc, and it just had, it was not capable of running anything close to what I needed for school and all that, and it ended up just being a dust collector in the corner of the room. I think maybe I tried to get some old style games running on it once, but it was so old it couldn't even run sort of like late 90s sort of late 80s sort of stuff. But oh god, do you know what the ironic thing is that thing probably would have been worth money now.
Oh yeah. Well,
because
to someone.
yeah, because this was pre eBay days, so if I'd still had it, then yeah, it probably would have been worth a couple of quid. But to me, when I did just the sheer disappointment when he presented this thing to me, that he just couldn't grasp the idea that he just brought me something that was very, very out of date. I don't think my old man understands that concept.
It's like a dad in like a sitcom.
Kind of is in a way, because he just, well, I mean, I'm into retro gaming. He's actually into retro equipment. So like he loves collecting old machinery, and he collects old motorbikes and stuff like that. So in a way, maybe he sort of never got beyond the 1960s. So to him, equipment from the 80s was like futuristic.
What's up, Mega?
I have actually not turned his mic on yet. You need to ask before you just pop in there, Mega Man. We had this pre-planned. I do appreciate you popping in, but this is a pre-planned event for just Bollocks and Matthews. But just give me 1 second. All right, there you go. You are off. So free to chat amongst yourselves.
Yes. What about you though, Mr. Matthews? Because I know that you obviously had your 2600.
Well, see, my dad is, I guess, like a slave to whatever's popular. So he went out and bought a Atari 2600 and a bunch of games at some point before I was, had any kind of cognizance. And he got tired of it very quickly, and then eventually he just kind of gave it to me. I was at a point where I could kind of just learn how to insert a cartridge and turn it on at the main TV, and then once I figured out how to do that on my own, he just brought it into my room. That was what I played for probably a year or two, and then the NES came out, and that pretty much eclipsed everything Atari related in my life and at school and all that, so no one cared about the 2600 anymore.
Oh, that's the trouble, isn't it? Is that ungrateful swines didn't understand heritage then, did they?
And honestly, it's only been somewhat recently that I've been able to appreciate it more, because I I didn't play it long enough to actually get a really firmly sense of nostalgia for it. So for a long time, it was a point where I could only go back this far. When I was in my mid-20s and starting to collect retro games, I would only go back as far as the NES. The Atari 2600 in that era, that was too far. Those games were effectively unplayable as far as I was concerned. So it did take me a while to actually get past that.
Yeah, because again, it would have been before my time, or I would have been too young for a 2600. But I was aware of it, and they would occasionally turn up at old car boots because I'm pretty certain the original wood paneled one was at one we went to, and I desperately wanted to buy it with my own money, and the old man just refused. He said that basically that's worse than what you've currently got. And in a way, I'm kind of a bit pissed that I listened to him because, again, knowing what I know now, it probably would have been a nice little modding job. What's it called? Getting it all, RGB enabled and all the other stuff you can do to it. I mean, if I was going to have one of them old ones, I would have plumped for a 7800 because of the fact that it plays 2600 games and its own. But then I found out that there's apparently only about 50 games for the 7800 that was ever made. So it's one of them consoles again that it kind of is a bit pointless to get. Because I bought a Jaguar without bothering to find out how many games are actually available for it. And it's like roughly the same number, 50 odd. It's like, oh, that was a waste of money.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know when the 7800 came out in Europe, but I think the 7800 came out, at least here, quite a bit after the NES.
Oh, it
Yeah.
definitely did.
It
Because
did.
There's two variants. Yeah. Well, I think the European one looks a lot prettier than the one you got.
Oh, I didn't even know there was a
Well,
difference.
Yeah.
Oh yes, there is a slight color scheme difference. I
Oh.
don't know why. They obviously, maybe they thought that we were more LGBT friendly even back then, or something. Because it's very, very sort of colorful. Your one's quite sort of grey and dull in comparison, but it does have the advantage, of course, of being 60 hertz rather than that bloody terrible 50 hertz that we got over here with the black bars at the top and bottom of the screen.
I actually have been lucky enough to just kind of stumble upon a couple 7800s at Goodwill over the years, and I've hooked it up a couple times. I don't. To me, it does not play 2600 games better than the 2600 does. I think it's probably just the way I'm trying to hook it up, but I do love the controller though.
I'm under the impression that, like a lot of backwards compatibility, it's sketchy.
I don't remember much about the 78 or the 52, to be honest. I had the Junior 2600. I inherited my dad's Woody, and later I sold that, and then I got a Junior later on. I bought from a buddy. I sold that, and then I had a friend. This was after NES was already gone. He had still held on to his Atari. I think this was just before Genesis, and a little bit before the SNES. But once the Genesis dropped here in North America, he gave me all his Atari stuff. It was a Junior plus I can't remember how many games, just a load of them. He gave them to me, and I promptly sold them to get a Genesis. So I don't deserve to collect any Atari. I parted
I'm
ways
pretty
with them
sure
many
that I
times.
eventually threw all my Atari stuff in the garbage. Like I'm pretty sure that's where it went.
What, you mean just like Atari did themselves?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I have looked for some remnants of our old video game stuff at my parents' house as they've moved, and I've been lucky enough to find 3 of my old NES games, but that's it. No one knows where the Atari went. I'm pretty sure it got thrown away.
Probably the same place where the ET games got buried.
Most likely.
Yeah, that's your parents doing the the sort of touchy sort of feely sort of we don't want to hurt his feelings. We damn well know what happened to it. It probably even just was put in the bin with the collection 1 week. They didn't even bother taking it to a recycle place. But I can understand that because stuff of mine that I foolishly left behind when I left home miraculously vanished, and it's sort of you can't get a straight answer out of them. Either they just forget, but my suspicion is that they just don't want to tell you the truth, which is they threw away something that actually you wanted to keep.
Yeah, I've asked them point blank, hey, you know where the old Atari is? My old NES, do you know where that is? That's in the garage. It's in some box in the garage. Go look. There's no box.
Either that, or your old man has secretly got into retro gaming and he just doesn't want to admit it. And somewhere, somewhere hidden in that house, he's done everything. The AV mod and all that. It's all, maybe even got a flash cartridge, so he's got the whole collection. Doesn't have to keep changing cartridges. Really taking it seriously. Hey, you might even have a secret YouTube channel you don't even know about.
You're right. That would be a surprise.
Do you know what it's like to actually have something go missing and no one knows where it is? I lived with my mom for a time. Had a bicycle and a big garbage bag of Legos down in the basement. And then one day I noticed the Legos were gone. I was like, okay, that's weird. Maybe my mom just got rid of it. Then a few years after that, I went down there. I'm like, my bike is not here. What the hell? Obviously, my mom did not know what became of it. So that's when I realized it wasn't my mom getting rid of stuff. It must have been someone in the apartment building, went down to the basement, saw something they liked, and just thought they could just take it.
All right, let me just catch up on the chat. Mr. I says, remember rabbit ears antennas? I sure do. Megatech has joined us. Welcome, Mega. OG says fuzzy screens. And the guys are just reminiscing because we're sitting here reminiscing. Mr. I goes on to say that, remember when you had to rent videos or video games? I think we've talked about that before, Em. We can talk that. If Bollocks has that experience going to like your local store to rent. Yes, I'd like to hear some more about that.
Oh, God.
Did they have like a video game rental scene in the UK?
Oh, yeah, because like I said, the actual cost of a lot of, especially when the cartridge-based ones took over, because a lot of parents wouldn't be prepared to pay those prices. So, I mean, I was kind of lucky in that respect that, a combination of not needing that many games anyway, and having, I think maybe a paper round or something to help fund getting the games. But yeah, renting them from the local sort of video shop was reasonably common. But I can remember what's called, they used to be the sort of go-to place for people who you go there to obviously rent a movie for your Friday night, and then you might try and do a trade-in as well because you'd had a game you're bored, sick of and wanting to upgrade, and you hand over something like about 5 of these things to get one back. And I don't know if it was just me, but I could never see the logic in that. Because, I do actually will replay old games even if I completed them. Whereas I know some kids just, once they play the game, well, they've got as far as they're going to get, that's it, get rid of it. But, yeah, we probably didn't have the nearest thing we had to a sort of a big brand rental place was what was called Radio Rentals. And they were the ones who basically rented TVs and video recorders when up till probably about the early 90s, because like I said, tape players used to be ridiculously expensive and TVs were still out of reach for a lot of people. So I mean, I'm pretty certain in my first few years my mum and dad actually rented all their electrical stuff, but in terms of the games, I think we probably did rent some, but there were a lot of second-hand places around a lot as well. Because I can remember one shop I went to was where I got my copy of RoboCop versus the Terminator 4, and I think the Terminator, the Genesis version of Terminator, for something like about I think about 20 pounds each. I bought it on that particular day. So to me, that was like a bargain at the time, and they kept me occupied for well, actually, the Terminator game didn't occupy me for very long. I think I finished it within about 10 minutes, but it was still, you know, to me that was still very cheap, because I mean for £20 it isn't that bad, because but even back in the Commodore 64 days, if you wanted a new full price game, you were still talking about maybe 10, 11 pounds, whatever it was. Obviously, you know, you could still buy quite a lot of games for say about £2 or £3, which was obviously more likely. And suddenly you were buying cartridge-based games that cost like 10 times as much, but you know, obviously it was much better quality, and probably the gameplay lasted slightly longer than 9 minutes. Even though obviously, you know, you probably can do a run through on a lot of them in a short amount of time.
I wish that I actually was aware of a second-hand video game scene when I was good. I would have bought used games. It didn't even occur to me that that might be a thing. You bought a game and then you kept it. And it didn't occur to me that anyone else would sell it after they had already purchased it.
Well, the other big thing was obviously us all lending games to each other. You know, everybody
Yes.
would have. I think maybe I can remember one kid having a SNES and everybody else just had Mega Drives. So it was very, very easy to sort of, you know, somebody had a game you particularly wanted. I know my cousin of mine had one. That's how I first ended up getting a play on Streets of Rage, not Bare Knuckle. And because he obviously lent me that, and in fact, speaking of which, I can remember one kid. I had a copy of Super Street Fighter 2 for the Mega Drive, and I mean that was a big deal when it came out. Very, very, you know, expensive game, and this was a kid who I was sort of friendly with, but didn't know that well, and he's, you know, really wanted to borrow this game. So I said, okay, yeah, you can have it for a weekend, whatever it was. Only for him then to claim that he'd lost it. But, oh, don't worry, that just means you can keep the game I've lent you, and I'll give you another one. And he just ended up giving me, like, 2 of the crappiest games that I think I probably got in my collection. One of them, I think, was Jurassic Park, and the other one was, what was it called? Skitchin'. It was Road Rash, but on rollerblades, is basically it, and it's bloody terrible. Yeah.
Jurassic Park was one of the few Genesis games that I had. It wasn't very good.
No, it wasn't very good at all.
Do you remember Jurassic Park, the video game for Sega, actually had a level that was planned for the movies but never made it in?
Oh, you're right. I can't remember which level that is now, though, because I haven't played it.
The river raft one.
Oh, okay. I mean, the great selling point of it was that, you can play as either Dr. Grant or the Raptor. It's like, what's so fun about playing what's called a dinosaur? You can't hardly do anything.
Yeah.
It was a lot clumsier to play as the Raptor. It was a good-looking game. It played like crap, and I did not like it. But I didn't sell it.
No, I mean,
I kept it.
I've still got both the horrible games he gave me in exchange, but
The difficulty was whenever I played as Alan Grant, the second level where you're in like the power station, and there's a moment the T-Rex head comes out. If you're not careful, it'll like one-hit kill you.
that's the T-Rex head where they could only actually put the head.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough graphical capability of any more. But yeah, it was all right, but it was not a patch on the game that he'd allegedly lost. But so in the end, I think I ended up buying it again. But because that was obviously at the time, I think everybody had a copy of Street Fighter 2 in some capacity.
Yeah, I think it was a very, very big deal when it came to the Genesis. Because I think it was...
Street Fighter 2 was the one game I wanted but never got.
I think that it was sort of like the SNES definitely had owning rights on that because it came out first on the SNES. It definitely ran smoother, and it definitely the voices were definitely a lot better. I don't know why, but they never ever mastered human vocal effects very well on the Mega Drive.
I like how you nickname it the SNES.
Well, that's what it was known as over here. We used to. It was the early sort of 90s. There was when they started twigging that this is what kids are into now, so we better start making some programs. So we had about maybe 2 or 3 TV shows that were computer games based, and that's what they always called it. It was always known as the SNES. They never called it a Super NES or anything like that, or even its proper name. It was just, how can we say this as quickly as possible?
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I was one of those kids growing up when I had the Genesis first before the NES, and my buddies had the SNES. I actually played the sports games. I played the adventure and the action games as well, but I played a lot of the sports games. But I'll give that one nod to the Genesis. Their versions of any of the sports games on the systems was far superior to the SNES. I'm not sure what it was, but it always played smoother. Must have been the blast processing.
I will say that I do love this talk we all have about retro gaming. I was actually thinking of starting like a series of streams where we could talk like retro gaming.
Like I was saying off the top, it was the 3 of us had planned it for a while, Mega, and you're welcome to join in. But this is something that we had pre-planned, like I was saying off the top when you first came in.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, it's just that obviously myself and Mr. Matthews have a sort of a vague interest in it, as I do collect retro consoles and probably should turn them on sometime. But
how many do you actually have hooked up?
Hang on, I'm gonna have to have a look because they are slightly overhanging my monitor. I have got a PC Engine Duo with the CD-ROM attached. It's the one that it looks like a briefcase when you hook it all up together. I've got a Wii on the shelf there. That shouldn't actually be there. NES,
it's like, that's not retro enough.
Well, that's the sad thing. It is becoming retro now, isn't it?
Kind of is.
It really is.
In my head, I still think it's like a modern system, but it's 2 behind now. What else we got? Got original NES, PlayStation 2, SNES, a Neo Geo CD front loader, a 3DO. Got the Mega Drive, Mega CD 32X, Dreamcast, Saturn, Master System. What's behind there? PlayStation 1. Atari Jaguar with the CD, and there's something else behind it. Oh, that's where I got the CDX behind there. Yeah. Again, I don't know why I've got a CDX. I don't need it because I've actually got 2 setups of Mega Drive. I've actually got the your version. I've actually got the Genesis with the Sega CD and I think it's a Japanese 32X. It's one of them sort of things I bought because somebody offered it to me, and I thought, well, it might go up in value. Yeah. But also, I've got loads of spares that I can mod it with. I just haven't got around to doing it yet. Like I've got a whole tray full of stuff I bought. I've got the RGB mod for the NES that I still haven't fitted. I've got an FS mod for the Master System because some games can play FM, what's called sound effects rather than standard. God, I've lost count of the amount of stuff I've got. That's why I'm a bit reluctant to get any more because I've fallen so far behind. it's going to take me years to catch up with all this stuff I need to do.
Yeah, I sometimes get a little stressed out when because I actually intend on playing literally every game I've ever bought. I never bought a game just to have it, really. I was telling myself, now I'm gonna play this. It may take me a couple. Yeah, I'm so far behind. There are games that I bought probably 2 or 3 years ago that I've yet to take the cellophane off of.
I was going to say, you're not one of what they call a cellophane collector then.
I don't care about it being... A game is no good if you don't play it. It's just... I'm terrible at being prompt when it comes to playing something that I've purchased.
Well, I mean, I at least can live with the fact that all the games I still have, original ones, they all got played at some point. Admittedly, they haven't been out of their boxes now for quite a while, because in all my consoles, the cartridge-based ones have all been given EverDrives or the equivalent of, so that I don't have to keep messing about moving cartridges and all that. It's just one single cartridge now with supposedly every game I could ever want to play already on them. But it's that you get your setup to the point where it's like anything I suppose you collect. Say you're somebody who likes to collect coins or something. Eventually comes a point you don't want to get your coins out anymore in case they get damaged or maybe UV will affect it or something. And it's kind of the same with this. It's all set up perfectly now, so I kind of don't want to turn it on in case I make a mess, or in case all the controllers over there are all nicely wrapped up, and it's like, well, I don't really want to untangle that. It's all nice and tidy.
Yeah, that's like I would play. I feel like I would play the Master System and the Genesis and how many other things I've got all kinds of console, not quite to the extent that you do, but I've got tons of consoles neatly packaged up in totes with all their cables and controllers, and it looks very nice on the shelf. It's just it has the side effect of I don't want to now unpack it and then hook it all up so I can now play and enjoy one of the systems.
That's the big problem, is that if you... I think there's part of it is that you also know that this is, even though in our heads, in a way, we kind of still look at this stuff and think, that's the stuff I used to play as a kid and all that, but it's not. It's sort of like, because your childhood is probably 10, 20 years ago, that means that equipment is now that old. So it's not like current, easy obtainable tech anymore. This is stuff that's slowly getting rarer and rarer. So it's like anything you get that's slightly old and all that, you're a bit more careful with it, and you're in the old days you just turn it on, shove the what's called controller in, not really care about it, ram the what's called the cartridge in. These days it'd be like gently putting it in, just making sure the connector's in exactly the right place, very cautiously putting the controller in. Oh no, this is too much of a risk. I'm gonna get a wireless controller.
Exactly. Bail out!
Like yeah. And I mean, the one I'm scared the most of is my my Neo Geo, because I did not realize how expensive they've now got. So that sort of thing sort of sits up on the shelf, and it's sort of like, I check it every now and again just to make sure it's still working, and it is. So.
But did you say that's a Neo Geo CD?
I've got both. I've got the CD version, and I've got the AES, the console version.
See, I would justify, because I honestly think that the cartridge-based systems they'll probably be fine. I don't believe that there's a lot of real wear. They're tanks. The CD-based systems are the ones that I think are going to wear out faster. Plus the media.
I mean, supposedly, yes, they are starting to see a lot of CD-based systems fail now. So obviously, with the equipment being as old as it is, and a lot of the older ones, they're starting to come out with more of these drive replacements. Like you can get one for the PlayStation 1. What's it called again? It's made by an Australian company that looks with a name that looks dangerously close to Cyberdyne. Oh, Cyberdyn, right? That's how they get around it. But even the font looks very Cyberdyne-y. But it's called the PSIO. They call it, and again, this is another thing I bought which I haven't installed yet, and it basically allows you to play, use SDs instead of CDs. So as many PlayStation 1 games as you can fit onto an SD card, I suppose. And in my Dreamcast, there's a USB replacement, so a board that fits where the the CD drive used to go, and then you load games onto a USB stick. Same with the 3DO, drive's gone from that board inside, now runs off a USB stick. I said all the cartridge-based ones, all the ones that are available, have all got these EverDrives. So even the old Neo Geo, they've finally done one for that, even though it was bloody expensive to buy. But that means, again, any game I want to play now, I can play it on the original hardware without having to pay about £5,000 to about £10,000 for what's called a game, if you can track it down, because of the scarcity of them. The one I would really like is one for the Mega CD, but what the Brainiacs have come up with, which is something I'm not particularly thrilled with, is they are now developing these EverDrive type cartridges, so that, again, yes, you put an SD card in, it'll play Mega Drive games, but they're now putting an FPGA board onto this cartridge that emulates the Sega CD, so that you can just have an ordinary Mega Drive, plug this cartridge in, load ISOs of old Sega CD games, and this cartridge will play them as if you've got a Mega CD plugged in. Even though technically, you're just emulating the actual Sega CD through FPGA. Now that's fine. I haven't got a problem with that. But I still would prefer to use the actual equipment, if you see what I mean.
You're making me kind of think of a question that I hadn't really thought of before. I think, would you say that you focus, your collection is focused more on the consoles than the games? Or is that...
Definitely because of a lack of space. Because, I've seen people's games collections before, and again, mostly Americans, and it's like, we don't have that space over here. Our house is tiny in comparison to what you lot get. So, I mean, even in here now, it's not a very big room, and my equipment takes up probably about, I don't know, a third of the room. So, and I've got one space at the back for storing the games I have got, which will be games that I picked up, obviously, from my 16-bit era. I've still got some left over from the PlayStation era. I can't remember exactly when I actually stopped buying physical media, but it was probably like mid-noughties, maybe. Maybe I might have bought some Xbox original games. I don't know. I was about to call it the Xbox One, but you can't call it that anymore. The original Xbox games, maybe.
Yeah.
After that, like with the Wii, I just soft modded it and then stuck games onto a hard drive, so that doesn't count. I suppose I've got a couple of 360s, but I don't use them. But, and again, I don't count that as retro. That's just my attempt at keeping up with my mates on Xbox Live before realizing I'm shite at online game. As I said to you before, is that when I play, I play to enjoy myself, not to get frustrated. It's that, it's like the Leslie Nielsen attitude to golf, which is I don't play golf to feel bad. I play bad golf, but I feel good. So it's
Right.
the same principle. It's the same principle.
I get it. That's just your justification for cheating. That's fine. Um,
I consider that a very good justification.
if you can look yourself in the mirror, I'm not going to judge.
I have no. I used to do the same thing when we played Monopoly. You know, occasionally a tenner would end up going into my pocket.
Don't ever let him be the banker, apparently. A little bit
I
of.
don't play to win.
Where do you have the
I
money
play
to buy all these properties? I just want to catch up on the chat for a minute because I normally talk to the chat a bit more on the stream, guys. So I want to let the guys know in the chat that we are here, we're doing our thing, but I want to make sure you're involved because that's what Crystal Lake Fridays is all about. So I want to say Mr. I is talking about really missing arcades at Kung Fu Theater. I'm not too familiar with that, but Saturday morning cartoons. Hell yeah, I remember those. OG says monster movie afternoons on Saturday. Inti goes on to say I had reacquire most of his old games. I only kept the SNES. Mr. I think M was talking to him about this about GameStop. But yeah, anything like that. We have EB Games up here. It's the same idea. I try not to support that place anymore. Johnny came in. Hey Johnny, how's it going? Thanks for coming in as always. He's all pumped tonight because on Shudder tonight, Joe Bob Drive-In's Season 2 starts tonight. He's got a promo code there for us. Mega joined us. He was talking about his retro game idea was to talk about the earliest games we played in our youth. Like X-Men and Spider-Man and Super Star Wars would be his examples. But for us, gentlemen, that's a good question to the panel. What's the earliest game that we remember playing?
It'd be an Atari game.
Yeah, I would agree.
Vanguard.
It would probably be the same. Something like that.
Vanguard or Pac-Man, probably.
Oh, that Atari Pac-Man.
Which was perfectly playable. I actually liked. I still like it. It still plays just fine. It just looks like crap.
I can remember it. It would have been the first game I played after loading that very first Christmas demo. It was a game called Ghetto Blaster, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it before. Again, I'm assuming it was a British developer who came up with it. And the purpose of the game, you can tell this is 8-bit gaming because it was anything could potentially be a computer game. You were I can remember it now. You were a Rastafarian who worked for a music shop called, I can't even remember what it was called now, it was a real daft name. And you had to collect 10 tapes from nearby houses. But before you could hand the tape over to this music shop, you had to get a number of people dancing first. And there was all these, you had to get batteries for the Ghetto Blaster. If you had it on too loud, the local constabulary would smash it up. There was also villains who didn't like you for some reason, who would attack you. One would kill you outright, one would damage your Ghetto Blaster, one would, it's called Jumpin' Jack Flash. If you walked into him, he would transport you to somewhere in the map. And you'd get, to get you lost. And it was, definitely some Class A must have been consumed to actually come up with that idea in the first place. But, again, as a 7-8-year-old kid, it was just mesmerizing. Not only playing this game, but trying to figure out what the hell it's supposed to be all about. But yeah, that's the first game the earliest recollection I have of ever playing a particular game. And I don't think I ever finished it because the tape number 10 was in a hut in the middle of the park, which was full of what looked like human goat people. Who, as soon as you walked into the park, they would attack you. I never ever managed to get. I think I made it to the hut once, but then they killed me when I came out. So, but just to show you, how wacky the games were back then.
That sounds like a classic Commodore 64 game, Bollocks. I've never played it, but
Oh, absolutely, Pete. I mean, I can still remember some of the weird games. There was, again, this doesn't sound like a particularly interesting game, and it technically it wasn't. There was one called Derby Day, and it turned out it was a horse racing simulator, and you didn't actually play. You just had to bet on which horse in the next race was going to win, and then the computer would just run a simulated race with completely random results. But I can remember me and my mates playing it for hours, just trying to guess which horse was going to come in first, and putting the fake money on the horse, and I think every single one of us ended up with thousands of pounds of debt at the end of each game because we just kept betting on the wrong horse. But it's the kind of thing you'd never see now, because, well, one, it wouldn't sell, and two, I suppose back then you had one person writing the game, so it didn't really matter if it was just particularly bad or anything like that. You could probably sell about 3 copies and you probably broke even.
Yeah, it's weird how tiny those development teams were. Or you beat the game and the credit rolls and it's like 5 names long. Oh
yeah, back in the 8-bit days, it was much easier. I mean, I can still remember on the inlet in a inside the cassette case. You'd obviously have the instructions for the game, and then you'd always have a bit where they said that, are you a programmer? Have you written a game? Do you fancy making some money? Send it in. So if, all these sad asses back in the 80s who'd actually read through the whole manual of learning how to program in BASIC and actually written games, you could actually send them off to these software houses, and if it was actually, if it had some sellability to it, you'd probably get a check for maybe a couple £100, and it would be sold. So it was the day and age of the solo programmer who could maybe not make a living, but they could probably get a bit of pocket money by just sitting in their bedroom all afternoon and tapping away. In fact, old Muggins here actually did write a game. I think I told you about this before, Mr. M. Was that one of the magazines I used to collect for the Commodore. They'd obviously have free games, and then they'd have demos of full price games that were coming out. And occasionally they give away actual software. And one month, I think probably back in about 92, I think it was a program called the Graphic Adventure Creator. And it was software so that you could create your own graphical adventure game, which is obviously back in the day was you'd get a game where you actually you could get maybe an image on the screen, then a load of text telling you what's going on, and then you'd have to tap in your instruction, press N for going north, S for south, and or look on table or something like that. And
this would be like the game from Big, basically
exactly. It's a graphic adventure game. So like the computer equivalent of those books where you could make the decision, and then you have to go to
Take that, you bastard!
whatever if you go left or something like that.
I love those books, by the way, but go on.
But yeah, and I remember, because I couldn't be bothered to learn BASIC, this was a much simpler means of doing it. So I ended up creating a game which I'm assuming I must have ripped off from watching Alien, because it's the old equivalent of being trapped on a spaceship with an alien, and you're basically on your own. I mean, I must admit I haven't played it for probably about 2 decades, so I have no idea on the quality of it. It's probably bloody awful and full of spelling mistakes, but I did actually finish it. It did actually, run as a game. You could actually load it up like a normal game, and it would start, and it would run, it wouldn't crash.
So you made a survival horror game?
I did, yes.
You should play that, and put it on YouTube maybe, so people can see. You don't even have to talk over it.
Oh dear, oh dear.
I'd be interested to see that.
I don't know if I have that level of shame when I actually, show it to the world, which is, here's my younger self's attempt at being a game maker, and this is why I didn't pursue it as a career. Because if memory serves right, I started it in 92, whatever it was, I remember that you could buy the manual. They gave the software away for free, but you had to buy the manual. And like an idiot, I didn't bother buying it. I decided to sort of, figure my own way through it. So there was loads of bits I couldn't quite grasp and how things work, so I had to sort of make it up myself. But I think I started it, probably did about half of it, forgot about it, and then a couple of years later I just came back to it and thought, oh, I've got some free time, I think it was even after I finished school, because like when you've done your exams, you've got months and months to wait until you go to college for the first time. So I think I just there's something to do, because of course the free internet days, and probably played all my Mega Drive games and couldn't afford any new ones, so it was a case of go back and see if I can finish this thing, and I did. But it's I don't think it's anything the world necessarily is crying out for. Let's put it that way.
I think it's to be fun to see, so you should reconsider that. 'Cause
Well,
you would have been 12.
probably about I don't know, maybe 13 when I first started it, and probably would have finished it at maybe about 15 or 16. So we're talking about the effort of somebody who hasn't even got to adulthood yet.
Yeah, so there's nothing to be ashamed about from 25 years ago. I think you're fine.
Well,
Really?
well, if I can find it, but I think there's also another sticking point with it, which is I think I put my real name into it.
Okay, fair enough.
But honestly, I don't think it's something that I would particularly want to, put. I mean, those adventure games and all that, they're all right, but they are a bit boring, because not really a lot happens in them. And I mean, there was one that I had from one of these magazines that gave it away. It was called was it the Cranmore Diamond Caper? I don't know how I remember that. It was an adventure game, and to this day, I've scoured the internet. I cannot find a walkthrough for it, because I could never finish that bloody game, and I really wanted to, but nobody seems to have actually done it, or nobody, or maybe all three of us who actually played it never finished it.
I was gonna say there's one I'm not familiar with. Was that what system was that on?
That was the Commodore 64.
Okay.
It was, and funny enough, the creator of that game used the same software I did, that graphic adventure creator. But he has actually got published. He actually, made it, sent it off to a software house, and they published it. Probably made a grand total of about maybe £3.50 from it, but it was just one of them sort of. It was frustrating, because if I had the game, if I had bought the game and actually had the proper instructions with it, I might have finished it. But because I never did, or I never bothered looking it up, and now I can't find anybody who seems to have played it, or certainly have never finished it. So that's a little frustrating. And I can't imagine any of these walkthrough channels doing adventure games, because they're so boring to watch.
What's the game called?
The Cranmore Diamond Caper.
While we're waiting for that, I'm just gonna update the chat a little bit. TechCom says, fun fact, Cyberdyne was shortened version of its intended name, Cyberdynamics. Mr. I says, the Nintendo Wii and 360, the Wii 60, that period, that's for sure. Atari 2600 with the extra stiff joystick. Everything Star Wars has joined us. Thank you so much if you're still there, Everything Star Wars, for coming in to say hello. TechCom says that Hail Everything Star Wars has just changed his Discord avatar to match his YouTube and Twitter avatar. But now that is not. So I missed some of that conversation because I stepped away for a moment, Bollock. Sorry, but you were saying that it was a giveaway through a magazine.
Oh yeah. This is the good old days, Pete.
So did you have to buy so many magazines and like return like the UPCs or whatever?
No, not at all. It was actually, it came on the front cover. I can still remember it to these days. You used to go into the shop. And
Oh, I remember actually. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't remember the 64, but I remember early not early, but PC games where you'd buy the thing and it'd have the game in the magazine. Is that what you're talking about?
You'd have the disc on the front. Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is exactly the same. The only difference is it was a tape box.
Oh,
on the front
okay.
of the magazine, yes. Yeah. And I mean, they used to give away some pretty good games actually with the magazine, because like I said, you'd get a free game and then you'd have a demo. Like one of the demos I remember being when I first started getting these magazines in 91 was the upcoming Predator 2 game for the Commodore 64. Which I remember specifically because for some reason Mike Harrigan was transparent. They didn't actually bother giving him a proper frame. It was just a green bar around what I'm assuming was meant to be like Danny Glover's torso.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you thought the Predator 1 game was odd, this game was even worse.
I have not played. I've not played it.
Oh, it's again one of them sort of games that you can tell they didn't put a lot of effort into.
But I think at that time, I think like you were saying earlier, at that time Commodore was really just like as cheap and cheerful as possible. Just like get them out there, let's get them out.
Well, this is something I miss because up to about 96, I think maybe, or even maybe 95, you had 2 generations, well 3 technically, that were all still active. During the sort of, I don't know, the Genesis's time, you still had the Master System going and the Game Gear. You still had the 8-bit computer still getting new games coming out. I don't think they fully discontinued the games for like the 64 until about 1994. So you were still. I mean, the last time I got one of those magazines, I'm pretty certain was 94. So, and they were still giving away free games with it then. So, at that period, you had, a lot of software houses still making, games for, what was effectively obsolete machines. And you'd never get that now. You might get a bit of overlap, like say when the last generation, like the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 came out. You might have a bit of overlap with the 360 and the PlayStation 3, but
Yeah.
it's quickly phased out.
Yeah,
Whereas
there
back
are
then-
there are those in those generations you're talking about where it'd be that holdover game that it would come out at the tail end of the past generation and everybody would miss it, and then like you'd go on to the next console and it would be featured. It would be like a featured game of the month, like on the PSN is what I'm thinking, because I'm thinking particularly of a PlayStation 3 game called Ni no Kuni. I remember that, The Wrath of the White Witch. It came out like right at the tail end of the PS3, and I had picked it up because I was like, okay. And then I remember it being like a feature on PSN when the new game got announced. And everybody was like, oh my god. I'm like, yeah, well, it was one of those games that I clearly remember getting that not many people may be familiar with at that time when the generation ended, but then it came back because people were exposed to it a different way.
Yeah. Ni no Kuni is one of the. Sorry to get off retro for a second, Pete, but you brought it up.
Yeah.
Ni no Kuni is one of the few games my wife has actually played. She's not much of a gamer, although she likes video games. That's one of the few that she's actually played through, and we, I believe, effectively rented it through the PS Now. Is that what, PS Plus?
Yes, like the PS Now.
And we only had like a limited time with that before we had to start paying for it. I think we bought like 1 month, and for I believe a solid 2 or 3 weeks, that was literally all she would do, is grind her way through that game. She's a huge Studio Ghibli fan, so that was what actually brought her to that game to begin with. But she liked it. She didn't like the second one though.
I have not played the second one. I've heard it's not quite the same, so I'll wait till it becomes like a PS Plus free game. I'm good waiting till 2 years down the road myself.
Yeah, she says it's too different, and I didn't watch her play it. I didn't really get a sense of what the gameplay was like, other than that it was a role-playing game, and it was kind of like Chrono Trigger. Because because it had like an active battle screen.
Yep.
But I didn't get a sense of why Ni no Kuni 2 was different, other than the fact that she didn't like it. So I don't know.
Pretty nice. Well, at least you got her what's called playing. That's more than I've managed with mine, apparently.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's not
Definitely
too often that my wife will actually play games. Really.
But I thought she had a drawer. We've had this discussion. I thought she has a drawer of NES games.
The drawer that I open up in, I think my NES video and my Atari video, the drawer I'm opening up is her drawer of games.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
So that's her Godzilla game. That's her Nightmare
Yes.
game. Those are her girl DS games off to the side. She likes to have these things, but she doesn't really play them too often. That's why she has mostly licensed games, because she likes Karate Kid, so it makes sense that she should have the game. So,
Makes sense.
but actually, playing the games, not too much. She was playing a lot of. What's the
Why won't you
DC
fucking
superheroes
die?
fighting game? You know, help me out here.
Sorry, what was that, Em?
The DC superheroes fighting game. Whatever
Oh,
it was called.
like Dark Universe Unlimited, like the newer one, you mean? Or are you talking like a retro?
It was on the PS3.
Oh, yeah.
That's what she was playing when we first got together. That she was playing that almost every night. So she does play games, but just not very often.
No!
And she's not very good.
Just want to address. Sorry, guys. I just want to address Mega's in the chat saying that we're watching Pete play Friday 13th while Slash and Cast is playing Predator Hunting Grounds. And will we ever get a Predator stream? We will, but I'm not paying full price. And I know this game studio, there's going to be bugs in that game. Even though it has more money with Sony backing it, I'm going to give it a bit of time to settle and balance before I buy it. So back to retro.
Dear. Hey, maybe you're to maybe you ought to play Postal 2 in the meantime, Pete. Because you're technically what's called a predator in that.
Yes.
That would be classed as retro now.
You got med spray?
I think it would be.
I need some heals if you got some. I'm real generous with you.
Dear. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to call time because it is getting a little bit on the late side here. But thank you very much for letting me on, Pete. This has been very nice little chat about, you know, one of my little hobbies.
No problem at all, Bollocks. Glad you could join us. For everybody in the chat, he's in Europe right now. He's in the UK. So sorry that I insulted you by saying Europe. Bollocks, I should have known better based on our previous conversations. But he was nice enough to join us. And thank you.
Yeah.
You're always welcome here. We'll definitely do this again, the three of us.
As I said, you know, we are technically part of the continent, but fortunately we've got the, you know, the channel between us and them. So, you know, at least that way, you know, we have a distinction, plus hygiene as well.
Yeah, I guess Cub is quite fond of reminding all of us that you are not part of the EU anymore. I guess that's what he means.
Well, you see, you know, Cub is still a bit pissy at me because, you know, in one of that videos I did with him, ironically the Uwe Boll one, he thought it'd be funny to do me a line to say in German, because he was convinced I was going to get it completely wrong and it would sound terrible. But what he didn't figure was that I would put it into Google Translate and learn it phonetically, so that when I actually recorded it, I got this grrr back because he said, "You got it right. That's not what I wanted." Which is why in the end, in the actual edit of his video, he actually cuts me off before I finish the sentence. Yeah.
What video is this? I haven't watched all the videos.
That would have been, I think, part 2 of his Uwe Boll
Yes,
retrospective,
yep.
which
Okay.
I'm very proud of because you know, it took a bit of cajoling to make him do it, knowing full well that he was not really a fan of his fellow countrymen's, movies, but and it became
Nor
a
should
nice running. It became a nice running gag for quite a while. I noticed when I was putting together the Tape 1 audio commentary, because we'd done it quite a while ago. I'm assuming. I don't know if Pete can remember, but it must have been sort of maybe June or July last year.
Yeah, I want to
not
say it
long
was
after.
like early spring, late summer or early spring for sure, Bollocks.
Yes, because he'd obviously only recently done the Hoover Ball retrospective, and that's why there's so many references to him to get a reaction out of him. That's the unfortunate thing. When I've shown that video to people, I've had to explain to them beforehand because not everybody knows about him. And when you explain it, that it was I deliberately did it with the intention of annoying him because I knew he'd do it. I knew he'd fold eventually, but also knowing, how bad his films are, and knowing that Cub would have to sit through hours and hours and hours of this drivel, just so because he will do that to make his retrospective,
Yep.
knowing he was going to watch the long director's cut versions of these films that are no better or even worse. It's very, very satisfying. Yeah. But yes, like I said, thank you very much, Pete and Mr. M. This has been fascinating. We must do this again sometime.
We should.
Definitely.
What time is it there? 5 o'clock?
It's just coming up to 3 a.m.
My math is off. That's crazy.
It's still
Yeah.
3. That's
I'll stay up that late. But
I'm gonna go straight to bed now, and I'm gonna be buzzing. So I'm gonna get complaints in the morning from my other half about waking her up at 3 in the morning, apparently. But that'll be fine because I was already awake.
there you go.
Yes. But yes, thank you very much, gentlemen. This has been fun. Let's do it again sometime.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Good, boys.
All right.
See you later, boys.
See you, Bollocks.
And Pete, I'm gonna bow out now too and let you get your groove on. So I will
Awesome.
see you in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you as well, Em. We'll definitely do this
And
again.
Thank you for having me on, Pete.
No problem. And everyone else in the chat, check out Em's video. It should be coming out sometime shortly, hopefully within a week. And he'll post that in the chat. And the next time we're together on Crystal Lake Fridays, I'm sure if he doesn't, one of us will take care of it. Well, we're back, guys. And to go back to the chat, Tech, I hear him, man. That's another thing, having the physical edition, getting extra, like, Easter eggs. And taking up space on the PlayStation right now is not an option. Because it's either I delete games or get another external hard drive. And I'm not doing that. I'm not adding on anymore. I'm good. I'm good. Johnny says the first movie tonight on Joe Bob Last Drive in his Chopping Mall. That's hilarious because I just watched that movie last night. And Tech, to answer your question, Chopping Mall is not a horror version of Dawn of the Dead. It's a horror movie, but it's it's more of like a comedy horror slasher, basically, where this group of teens are holding a party. They all work in a mall. I think the majority of them work in a mall. They hold a party, and while they're having this party, these security robots that were designed to attack intruders or keep them all safe go haywire, kill their creators or their controller scientist dudes. It was the 80s, remember? One of the guys is reading like a Playboy when he gets killed and smoking a cigarette. Can't get more 80s than that. Kicking back in a chair, he probably had like a can of new Coke on the table. But they go around and the guys have to team up. It's kind of like a futuristic version of the Blob. It feels a lot like the Blob, where the gang has to take on the problem. So it is kind of like Dawn of the Dead too, that they kind of take on the problem. They work together. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Most of them end up dying, but they end up beating the monsters. And Mr. I says, I haven't bought it yet. It just doesn't seem as polished yet enough. Really. You got it. Exactly, Mega. Exactly. It's like a satire of it. It's not a... It definitely is. And Mr. I says, do you have the 1 terabyte PS4? No, I do not. I don't think I do. I think I have the 500 gig. Because I bought one of the original ones. I bought the Destiny skin. When everybody was hyped about Destiny, I hadn't played it, and I put it in, and I was like, it's kind of cool, but there's not a lot of content. Exactly, Johnny. The robots are half Johnny Five and half Alpha from Power Rangers. That is perfect. That is perfect. And M says he's heard of the movie from Red Letter Media. You should check it out. Since, like Johnny says in the chat, M, there's a free preview for Shut In, I think it is, for a free. I don't know if it's 7 days or a month, but that'd be a good one to watch. And especially if Jericho is Jericho with that one, Johnny. Or I'm pretty sure he's with all 3 movies tonight. Mr. I says, was Dawn of the Dead the one with Ving Rhames, the remake, the 2004 remake? I want to say that's the one that was made by, was it Michael Bay? I can't remember. But that was the remake. No, not Michael Bay. Who am I thinking of? I'm blanking. Another horror creator. It'll come back to me. But that was the remake with, what's her name? Sarah Polley. Oh my God. The Canadian in me remembers Sarah Polley. The Canadian teenage boy remembers Sarah Polley. But Mega's also talking about the 78 movie, the original Dawn of the Dead by George Romero and Tom Savini. And it is, it was on the tip of my tongue. He did Justice League and Batman vs. Superman. Why am I blanking? Why am I blanking on this? I don't want to read the chat. How do I not know who made the movie? Zack Snyder, yes, I looked at the chat. I gave in. No Jericho yet. He is supposed to be on tonight. Thanks for the update, Johnny. Tech says, go Power Rangers, indeed. Mighty Morphin, the Mighty Morphin variety, the first season or so. I know that one very well, but after that, I'm not too familiar. I've seen some of the movies, but I'm not too familiar with the other series. But Super Sentai, I'm really familiar with that, the Mighty Morphin variety, even though I think it was like 2 seasons of like 60 episodes, something ridiculous. That would never happen today. You'd never get 60 episodes out of a star's contract, like an actor's contract. That's the thing of the past. Mr. I says, I've never been interested in Destiny. I thought Modern Warfare would be good, but they made it a camper's wet dream. They really did, man. They really did. The second Destiny has a lot more content. The second Destiny, I haven't played all the expansions, the latest DLCs and things like that. But when the game first dropped, it had a little bit more contact playability, and what you actually do, you weren't just going around in areas using cool equipment. I found there was a bit more gameplay to it. I enjoyed it. Not that I finished it, that's for sure. I didn't keep up. There's very few games on the PS4 that, because we talk so much retro, let's talk about PS4, PS3. There's very few games on the PS4 that I fully, completely finished, like in terms of DLC. Tech says, now as a reminder, I live in Ontario, right? Mr. Matthews says, it was pretty good. I liked it. Oh, Dawn of the Dead remake. Yep. It was pretty good. Now, Day of the Dead. There is a Day of the Dead remake with it's not Nick Castle. I can't remember who's in it. But there is a Day of the Dead remake. That's a little bit different. That one, not so good. Mr. I says, dude, Justice League was awful. It really was. It really, really was. It was 2 different movies, but we've been down that street on many streams here on my channel. We used to do the DLC with 2 of my buddies. Bollocks would come in once in a while for watch parties, but we would talk about movies from that time, like a couple of years ago. I remember seeing Justice League in the theater, and it had potential. It just wasn't fully realized. And I know there's 2 movies because Whedon took over after Snyder left the project, so... Tech says, I like Mighty Morphin, Zeo, Lightspeed Rescue, Time Force, and the reboot film. Mr. I says, the CGI in acting was so bad that movie looked like a comedy. Tech says, how is rent prices for houses up here? Well, we do pay in Canadian, so that would be a little bit, but my area used to be somewhat affordable, but it's definitely gentrified, not gentrified, as of late. Wow, I am missing my vocabulary tonight. Whoops. Let's just go over to the shop. Mr. I says worst Call of Duty was Infinite Warfare. Way too George Jetson. Techcom says Justice League was flawed, but I still enjoy it because it finally got Superman right, CGI mustache notwithstanding. Well, yeah, I agree with you there. Like that was the one redeeming thing of that movie if it had it, that it wasn't that the dick Superman that we got in Batman versus Superman. Mr. Matthews says, I have not seen Day of the Dead remake. I've been reluctant to because the original, my favorite zombie flick. Nice. And yeah, don't do it, man. Do not do it. All right, we've had a really rough night on Friday the 13th. I'm glad everyone could join me in the chat there, have our little get together and talk retro gaming, because I've been playing like garbage. Other than against the offline bots, it's been not a good night. Tech says, well, my stepdad wishes we lived north of the border so we get more money in the mail than Trump is offering. He's giving us $1,200, and we hear Canada is getting $2,600. What it is, it's all depending on your work status. It's a certain amount. It's a percentage of that, and it's all payable back. It's like income. It's going to be payable on your income tax the following year, the next year. And remember, it's in Canadian funds. Remember, it is in Canadian. And money, things are way more expensive up here. Mr. I says, yeah, they had androids with guns running on the wall, real Blade Runner. That's one thing we never got, was a good Blade Runner game. I know in recent years, like we got Alien Isolation, we got some decent Alien games. But we never really got a good Blade Runner game. Tech says, what's the difference between Canadian money and US money? Some people refer to Canadian money as monopoly money. Let's just put it that way. I think it's about 30% right now, exchange rate. It's about 70 cents on the dollar. So it's very beneficial to be changing American money into Canadian. For a while there, 5 or 6 years now back, the Canadian dollar was close to par, but not in the last 5 years. Mr. I says, your playing is cool, but I think the jewel of your streams is your personality, dude. Some streamers are rude. Oh, man, I get what you're saying about that, and I don't want to disparage other streamers. Not that I know any of them personally, but I appreciate that people come in here and chill, talk amongst each other about things they like, share stories. Without you guys, there wouldn't be a stream. Like, I understand the YouTube game. It's not like Twitch. You're not going to get as far as you want on YouTube, and I'm cool with that. I'm just here to have fun Friday nights and to chill, do the same thing you guys are doing, man. And if you guys want to join me while I'm doing that, then by all means, even better. Even better. OG says true, Mr. I, and Mr. I says ours is monopoly money too. It's all Fiat, Fiat, and Techcom says, so if I trade a US dollar, I'll get 70 cents Canadian. No. Other way around. Other way around. Tech is that if you give $1 US, you'll get $1.30 Canadian. Like your currency is way better. Way better. Sorry, my dog is behind me, licking me a little bit. And Tech says you still need more watch hours. Yeah, man. I have not hit the thing, but I really slowed down on the content. Like we do the Crystal Lake Fridays, which is more than cool for me, and I make the bits and pieces. But I've really slowed down on the streaming and the content from when I was say a year ago with YouTube, when I was trying to ram out as much product as possible. I eventually discovered, and I read this going in, that it's not about it's not about repetitive content or having a quantity of content, it's the quality. Mr. Matthews says, At Dawn is a very inviting and attentive host. That's why I stick around as well. Well, I appreciated him. Met you through the streams, and yeah, like tonight was proof positive of that. Like what the show can be. Like 3 people that have a passion talking. Mega joined us there for a bit. We talked to Mega last week about Resident Evil. The dude Mega knows his Resident Evil game. That's for effing sure. And that's what it's all about here, man. On my channel, and that's what YouTube should be. The words are YouTube. It's not MeTube. It's YouTube. It's all of us. Maybe I'm just an old-fashioned boomer. I've called myself that many, many times. Inti says, Canadian money, even though I'm a Gen Y, like I would consider myself Gen Y. I'm not Gen X. I'm a little bit later than Gen X, and I'm not a millennial. Like we're in that gray area. I think that's what the term is. Inti says Canadian money equals bison dollars. Oh, I ran the wrong way. I heard the door being broken. And I don't have a weapon. This isn't good for Deborah. Tex says, okay, it seems the watch hours are the hardest to reach for some. It really is, man. And Mr. I says, that's how your stream grows. People subscribe to support, and they support people they like. That's the way, man. That's the way I'm going to be. It's grinding. That's all it is. And Tex says I can come back on if you like. All good for this time. Next, we'll do another one. Like, we can do one together, Mega. Next time I'd like to pre-plan it like we did the other one. That way I know you're coming on, and we have like a set thing we're going to talk about. Like a little bit of structure. What the hell happened? I'm in a cabin. We were not in a cabin. We glitched in a cabin. Mr. I says, you burn yourself out like that? Better to do 1 or 2 good streams a week? You got it, man. That's what was going on. Because I have a full-time job, and can be pretty busy sometimes a season, sometime a years. But then I was also burning the midnight oil or burning the candle at both ends, whatever like analogy you want to use, trying to get the stream. I was streaming this. I was doing Dawn's DLC on Sunday. I was trying to get a review out every week. Go back and watch the stuff on my channel if you want to. You're more than welcome. You don't have to. Like I was placing reviews out as much as possible. Text says, okay, but at least I showed. Hey man, I always support your, I always appreciate your support here on the stream. I always appreciate it. That's why, like I said, next time we'll pre-plan what we're going to do. Maybe we'll have Em on and we'll talk about some games, some more modern games that we know, and then we talk about movies, whatever we can get to, sort of thing. Text says, it sucks that your bits and pieces stream last night got cut twice. It really did. There was something wrong with the internet last night. I think Em mentioned that his wife had mentioned that the internet was having issues in general worldwide. That was showing last night. It was really showing last night. And when we were up, it was just like total wait time. Just constant wait time. Mr. I says, oh yeah, you were busy. That's what it was, man. And then, like you say, that's what I eventually figured out. Just focus on the things that you can bring to a good stream. And that's what I hope you guys find here at Crystal Lake Fridays. And I know we have some OGs, like OG in the chat, and I know Redshirt is probably lurking, and Zombie Cat, and maybe RoboCub, and Inti's joined us. Mr. M came with us. Megatech came and joined us as well, and now you're here, Mr. I, and that's what it's all about, man. That's what it's, Johnny was here, and other YouTubers, so...
Yeah, 2 choices, me or the car.
Inti says, too many people are online. We're all sucking the well dry. Really? Really? Double-edged sword, though, because you've got that aspect that everybody's trying to stream or do their own thing, and then we're watching when we can, but it also gives a variety of content, you know?
Go, 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 go.
Mr. Matthews says, she says that was the whole day, that was the whole day, what the day was like working from home. And it's funny that we were we were talking to Bollocks. I just looked back and I remembered I put a Final Fight on the screen, and it was Streets of Rage he was a fan of. I screwed that one up, Eb. I screwed that one up. Tex says, the other day when I hit 101, I celebrated with a Terminator Resistance stream for 7 hours, and I competed with the bigger channel streaming at the same time. I saw you doing that, man. You were on forever. 7-hour stream, man. That's a trooper. Zombie Cat Cub says, yep, here and chilling. Thank you, man. Always appreciated. And Johnny says, and her head just went boom. Oh, yeah. Ah! That's the girl that, because that's the girl, the blonde that has the slimy boyfriend, and she post-sex, she's like, I want a cigarette, and he's like, there's some Camels over there in the desk, and she's like, you know I only smoke Virgin Slims. So 80s. So 80s. So I've got the Discord beeps in the background. I'm gonna just pop over and mute that. Mute that channel that's doing all the talking. Mr. I says it's a serious stream, 7 hours. I think the longest I've gone is about that. And that was on a DLC, like with talking with Jez and Cub. That was a long one.
Injure me still.
Mr. I says, Mr. M says, I don't get it. He was pretty adamant it was Streets of Rage, but I thought for sure it was called Bare Knuckle over there. Maybe that was the unofficial title, like the street title, the more like fancy. Richard says lurking as well with a couple drinks, a martini glass and 3 beers. Johnny says Kelly Maroney from the movie just joined Joe Bob. Oh, nice, man. Kelly Maroney, which character did she play? I think that was the one, the final girl, the final couple, I'm pretty sure. The one that was like the nerdy girl. Mr. I says, I was watching clips from the first Resident Evil movie yesterday. I actually liked that cheesy film. I saw that in the theater. That was made by Paul Anderson, I'm pretty sure. He also did the Alien vs. Predator movies. I remember liking it in the theater, but I haven't gone back recently to watch it. Our friend Cub, we were talking to Bollocks about him, is that he did a review of all the Resident Evil movies not too long ago. That's the most recent I've seen any clips of it. That's a movie I need to revisit. I remember it being okay and not aging well based on the last time I saw it, but could be the cheese factor that brings you to it. Mr. Matthews says, Cub did a 7-hour stream once. He did, and we were there, Mr. Matthews. And we were there. So was OG. OG was in the chat. Tex says, I talked about some ideas I had for Terminator. If any of you want to watch the 7-hour stream just to hear them. Nice. Nice, Mega. Mega knows his Terminator as well. He does a lot of retrospect and what if videos on his TechCom channel. What if in the Terminator universe. Like, what if Judgment Day hadn't happened? Next match, Johnny Lawrence. You got him, man. Let's do it. It is after 10. 10 o'clock is the witching hour. It's the Johnny Lawrence hour. It's time for Deborah. It's Deborah's bedtime. Johnny Lawrence is up. Inti says Bare Knuckle is the name of the franchise in Japan. Okay. That makes sense, Inti. Tex says the first 2 Resident Evil films were okay to me. Next time I join, I'll talk a bit about it. There, we can talk about that. Next time we do it. I'll let you guys know. I'll touch base with you and M, and we'll pre-plan it one night for you guys to pop in, and we can talk about the Resident Evil games. Maybe I'll stream some Resident Evil. I do have some Resident Evil on Steam and on the PlayStation. OG said Cub. Cub did. Y'all were there on it. M2. Inti says Resident Evil 1 is all right. And Mr. Matthews says, aw, thanks, Inti. I was confused. Jenny says, yep, the nerdy final girl. She's in The Night of the Comet and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. She's in Fast Times? What's her character in Fast Times, Johnny? I can't place her. Mr. I says, what was the name of that foreign guy that used to make cheesy video game movies? His movies were awful. Anybody remember his name? Are you talking about the guy who made, was it called Gamer? I thought I muted that. Sorry, guys. We have a lot of chalking going on. I thought I muted all of my Discord channels. But yeah, I want to say it's Gamer. It has I can't remember who's in it. But that might be made by that same person. Mr. Matthews says, that's where I got to talk about video games. Mr. Matthews says, Uwe Boll. I think that was my off-topic server that was making all that noise. Oh, it's actually us. It's actually us. This time we're really playing.
Find them,
OG says Cub sounded bewildered.
make them pay for what they did to us.
Alright, let's see if I can just leave this. Leave my Discord. And still stream. Because, yeah, that's getting a little annoying. Yeah, right. Let's do this. We're probably going to get killed because I paused there. Or we're going to have a lot of escapes. Think positive, Zalo. Think positive, Zalo. OG says Cub sounded bewildered. Tech says, I got a comment asking, what if Reese failed to save Saravid? What if Reese survived T1? I've been wondering what the next will be, and this request shall be it. There you go. That's a good choice, man. What if Reese actually survived? What if he didn't die? Then we wouldn't have those wonderful deleted scenes from Terminator 2 Judgment Day of him talking to Sarah in the hospital. Oh, House of the Dead, yes. Uwe Boll, that's it. M answers our questions, Uwe Boll or something like that. And that was him. Mr. Matthews, like Bollocks had said, Cub watched every one of them. Blood Rain for everybody. And a lot of those were made in Canada. He filmed a lot of those in Canada. Hey, yeah, Mr. I, there you go. Dead Island and Blood Rain. He did the 2 Blood Rains as well. Tex says, for one thing I know, Sarah won't be as unhinged as she was in Terminator 2. And Mr. I says, LOL, I'm laughing my ass off. Did he? Yep. When he watches something, when Cub does a movie review, he watches every piece of media from that person. So if he does a retrospect of a movie series, he watches every movie, every TV series. Are you Canadian? Hey, are you Canadian? Boat or car, boat or car, boat or car. Nobody ever tries to get the car going at Pinehurst.
Please, no!
I gotta admit it, he made the kind of movies you'd love to hate.
That's my special.
You're not wrong. Oh. Somebody's on the other side of the water. Just use some part 8.
Can we be friends?
Why is there a bear trap outside a house? No. We can't be friends.
I have feet.
You have feet, that's great. That's great news. Mr. I says he must have been rich to keep making all of those video game B movies. Oh, Deborah. How dare thee. Get away. Mr. Matthews says, don't be friends with her, Pete. I will not. I will not be friends with anyone. I'm not going to acknowledge that comment. Oh, I missed it again. Oh, I hate when you can't place another bear trap down. They're not going to get affected by that. So that's too far over to the right. Mr. Rice says cut them off for her. Could definitely do that. Where's he hiding? What the heck? Was that a bot? Was that a real player or a bot? Who just hides in a corner? OG says kill, kill, kill. Working on it, man. Working on it. Tech says now I have 3 things to work on tomorrow. Getting a what if video made, working on my Terminator and Resident Evil crossover, and finishing Blue Shogun. Yeah, man. You've been working on that for a while. It should almost be there. The Blue Shogun, I mean. Mr. I said, did she really say she has feet? Yep. And then she said something else that I'm not responding to. But we may meet again. We may indeed meet again. So I might try the Bits and Pieces live stream again on Sunday. Might give it a shot on Sunday. What are these people doing? These trolls. Trolls. And I just got dummied by La Chapa.
No matter what they do, you cannot die. You can never die.
Yeah. Ah, I'm stuck in the wall. Almost had him. These trolls. Trolls. LeChapa should not have the strength to do that. This broken game. Even with the buffs, he should not have the strength to dummy Jason. A character with a level 2 strength should not be able to dummy Jason. Rant time. Oh, yeah.
You cannot die. You can never die.
Texas, I've been really slacking on Blue Sugar and I've been working on it not as much as I like. I really need to prioritize. Mr. M says that sounds like a fun idea, being able to chat about each article. That was my idea, man. To be able to mix in a little back and forth with everybody who was able to tune in as it happened.
Get up, Jason. Find them. Kill them.
Mr. Matthews says I was all ready to discuss the new Batman. And Ninji says the new Batman looks like Daredevil. Sure does. A Daredevil that twinkles.
Please, no!
Sorry, Stormy.
That's my Jason. That's my special soul.
And the Batmobile looks terrible. Really. Mr. I says LeChapa on steroids. Really. All these characters, especially when they get the epic and legendary buffs of strength. And like the combo damage, if you have like the teammate damage one, like good luck. Good night. But I've ran to... That was a waste of Tommy shotgun. We've got a scrub playing as Tommy.
Get up, Jason. Find them. Kill them.
Looks like a not so good Tommy is playing. Oh, almost had him on the rebound. Done. Mr. Matthews says, I don't like the idea that Robin is in it. If Robin was done right, I'd be open to it. But not from what I'm hearing. I don't think this is Dick Grayson, Robin. I might be wrong, but I've heard like this could be like Jason Todd. Am I way off base about that? You're trying to get in the boat against Part 8, Jason? Are you kidding me? Trying to get in the boat against Part 8, Jason. Like, give me a break.
Time to
Like a water monster.
They deserve to die. Make them suffer like we.
Oh, I had them again. Ah, missed. Why are they all over at the big house? That's that same stupid person. Playing as Victoria. Mr. Matthews says, but I guess it all depends on how they do it. It might work. TechCom says, to be fair, I'm trying to get all the rare and legendary perks by getting rid of any that aren't red or purple to save on spending points. I don't think that player would be hiding in there. I don't like the player, but I'll give them the credit that they know what they're doing. Even though they just played the troll version. She's probably upstairs dancing. Mr. I says GG. And TechCom says off with their heads. Come on in here. You gotta be in Violet's room dancing. No. That's what I would be doing. Dancing to that new aged, like the new wave, like Egyptian song from part 5. When she gets killed. Anybody? Bueller. Bueller. Really again? Dead. And Mr. I says, how do you feel about Christian Bale's Batman? Let me get to that one. I want to try to get this last person that's probably still over in that house before we run out of time, and then I will get into that one. I'm a fan of the Christian Bale Batman movies, and I also liked him in Terminator Salvation as John Connor. Christian Bale the person?
Hi.
Not so much. Christian Bale's not a good dude. I will say that. We had the whole video of him yelling at his like assistant or whatever, or the director during Salvation, and then like his comments about his mom a couple of years later. Yet, but I do enjoy the Christian Bale Bruce Wayne. Batman Begins is great. I'm not he's okay as Batman, but I think the villains around him make it better. Like Heath Ledger as the Joker, and Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul make those movies seem better than he is in the Batman character because they're playing off him. Even Tom Hardy as Bane. Unpopular choice. I actually like The Dark Knight Rises. He's good as Bruce Wayne. Christian Bale's really good at Bruce Wayne. But yeah, Batman Begins, I'd say is a solid 8. Dark Knight, about the same, if not a little bit less. I'm not like that might be another unpopular take. I actually kind of prefer Batman Begins to The Dark Knight. No, don't get me wrong. The Dark Knight is a great film. I just not fully enamored with it, as some may be. I still think the best Batman movie was the first Michael Keaton movie, but showing a bit of my bias. But I like The Dark Knight Rises as well. So yeah, he's pretty good. I don't like him as a person, but as an actor, he really does a good job. I just recently watched all 3 Christian Bale movies, and then Terminator Salvation right on the tail of it. And he says his meltdown was hilarious. And Mr. I says I heard he was an a-hole. It sounds like it, man. I don't want to, like, all we've heard is that audio recording and then, like, comment scenes made in interviews. It's hard to say, but... And he says a little too old to be adopted by Wayne. And that if it's Jason Todd. That's what I've heard. That could just be people talking on Twitter and YouTube. I have no idea. OG says Jez is showing Detour tomorrow on his Digital Pollution channel. Just started playing old movies in his channel. I know, that's a great idea. I want to do that too. We were talking about that in his stream. I might do that here on Don's channel as well. I might bring about the rebirth of the DLC, but do it with like we get together and we watch public domain movies and we make our own choices, our own selections. There's only so many in there, but we might have some favorites that other people might not be super familiar with. Mr. I says this game was everything when it came out in 2017. Everybody was on F13 in 2017-18. It's still going strong, but everyone was playing it back then. It was, man. It was, man. I remember the server wait times. I never had it on PC at that time. I wasn't lucky enough. I had it on PS4. The wait times were ridiculous. Just ridiculous. Waiting by a window again, apparently. Mr. Inti says, I want you off the set, you prick. Yes. Text says, the other day I saw a clip of a PS2 game called The Bouncer and was inspired to make a version of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and Roadhouse. Was going to call it Bouncer Brawler, but it's taken. I remember Bad Street Brawler. That was a wonderful game on the NES. One of the only games ever made that could play on the Power Glove as well. Oh, I give up. I'm just going to go chill in the water. And Mr. I says, yes, I think he's a really good Bruce Wayne because he's playing himself as a spoiled rich prick. Bingo. Tex says, I love the Dark Knight trilogy, but to me the best Batman film is Batman Forever with Val Kilmer. See, we talked about that before, Mega. I know you're a fan of that movie. I really enjoyed that too. I remember seeing it in the theater, Batman Forever. It does not get the credit it should. Mr. I says, loved him in American Psycho as Patrick Bateman. Yep. Mr. Matthews says, Itty, you could actually hear him calming down during that rant. It's not really that terrible when you actually hear what he's saying. And Inti says, it was funny. I never thought he was insane. I'm the one walking. He needs to stop walking. I'm going to smash your lights. Johnny says, Bell has apologized for his meltdown and mom stuff. He's pretty mellow now. In recent years, yeah. I hear that. I just mean at that time. Johnny says, I remember reading Bale said he takes acting very, very seriously because he can't believe people would pay actors so much this kind of work. I can respect that. If that's something I missed that I didn't see him say.
That's my good boy. Mommy has
Mr. I says, yeah, I remember watching this girl play it on Halloween in 2017. She was drinking champagne and eating Cheetos during the stream. Every streamer was playing this in the day, I remember. I used to watch a guy on Twitch called Laughin'. He was actually buddies with the guys at Gun Media. And that's how I became familiar with the game, because he was streaming the alpha. He was streaming the alpha and then he was doing the beta. And they were working together, and he was really prominent in the game as it came up. And then as soon as it busted, they really stopped talking to him. So I still kept on because he did a lot of Friday 13th things. And he's one of the guys that when I first started watching streamers on YouTube or Twitch, that I'm like, hey, man, I could be something like that, just chill. Settle in with a couple friends and just go. OG says, yes, DLC should return with movies and more Americans from pole to pole Americans to balance out the Europeans. There was a little bit, because I'm like in between. I'm Switzerland. I'm Canada. I'm like the Western Hemisphere. Well, I guess there wouldn't be a Western Hemisphere. Western time zone, because it's Northern, Southern Hemisphere. Is there a Western Hemisphere? We're like the Western version of Switzerland. We're neutral, baby. We're neutral. Mr. I said that's because he's getting older. True. You start to mellow a little bit. When you start to get some years, I mellowed a little bit, but I'm still not quite fully there. Text says Batman Forever had bat nips as well, but you had to look hard to notice. Also, Batman was on the cover of Time magazine, totally not Ninja Batman. I remember enjoying both Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey in their roles. I thought the villains in Batman Forever were well done. They were a little over the top, but I grew up with Batman 66, and the villains were over the top. You had, they never had Two-Face. They couldn't get the effects right, so they did False-Face instead. We shall not talk about that character, but you had Frank Gorshin originally taken over by John Astin. I think he only did it for a couple episodes, John Astin, as the Riddler, but Frank Gorshin was so coked out of his mind it wasn't funny. I remember reading Adam West biography, stories about him and Gorshin going to orgies all the time, just flying on cocaine. The swinging 60s. Mr. Matthews says, after he initially loses the shit, he starts walking everything back. He tells the guy many times that he likes him. He's a good guy, but they'll never work together again. They'll never work together again. But I was getting on to Batman. It's just like, and it's been done to death and jokes about it, just how over the top he is with the Batman voice. I'm Batman. Mr. I says the game is still going though. That proves it has staying power. Yeah, man. If this had DLC, if it has continuing content, the base would be just as big as it currently is. Oh, we have a hacker. We have our first hacker, Inti, and everybody else. But Inti and I have talked about this on many nights that have streamed here. We'll see who's flying through the air. If we have a Bugsy going along in a wheelchair, and we are Adam. We are Adam. Tex says, ooh, a real Hulkamaniac. Inti says, I remember that rant in an episode of Family Guy. Peter Griffin eats Bale's ice cream and he starts his rant. Tex says, I prefer Aaron Eckhart's Two-Face. Oh yeah, it's way gritty. Way gritty. Where Tommy Lee Jones is more comical, but Jim Carrey's Riddler was awesome. Really was. Chunny says, cocaine and orgies. Mr. I says, I want to see someone run through Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 for old time's sake. That was a great game, so much fun. I forgot to do that. We were talking about that last week because I have Left 4 Dead 2 on here. I've got a 1 on my PlayStation. Or was it on my Xbox? No, I think it's on PlayStation. Copy. Mr. Matthew says he sounds like the Cookie Monster. Tex says no to the cocaine, yes to the orgies. I don't think you had a choice there in the 60s. They went hand in hand together, like peanut butter and jelly. Mr. Matthews says, I don't like it. Oh, the voice, yeah. That's why he's the better Bruce Wayne when he's the Bruce Wayne character. Michael Caine was good as Alfred. But Ra's al Ghul, like Liam Neeson in a Batman movie. Can't get any better than that. Mr. I says, how do you know he's a hacker at Dawn? Because he's got those skins. He's got all those different... he's got like a screwed up Jason. It's not an actual Jason. He's got skins on top of the actual Jason skin. And I guarantee you he'll be glitched. He'll have some type of glitch to help him. And he says, Tommy Lee Jones and the Riddler in Batman Forever are the same character. That's true. That is true. Mr. I says Heath Ledger owned the Joker role. I can't disagree with that because I like Nicholson's Joker, but he was hamming it up a lot of the times. And Cesar Romero's Joker, although Batman 66 is where I cut my teeth with Batman, and I still have fond memories of that show. Like, let's be serious. Cesar Romero as the Joker, he refused to shave his mustache. So on the Blu-ray copies, you could see it even because it never got our DVD release because of the whole disagreements between 20th Century Fox and ABC, I think, held the co-rights. They could never get it on DVD until they finally agreed. And it came out on Blu-ray. Much too late in Westlife, like right at the end, actually. So where they could have had him doing a lot more work promoting it. That was a loss there. But now on the Blu-rays, like even on the VHS copies that you would buy, you could see it. Tex says, I personally don't like how everyone uses the audio bells, meltdown, and skits. Leave the guy alone. Mr. Matthews says, right, they should just have combined the two characters into one, called it the Riddler. The two Riddler or Riddler face? Riddle face. There we go. Riddle face me this, Batman. Now I'm getting a little loopy. Tex says, I enjoyed Liam Neeson's Ra's al Ghul